We paint these broad pictures of these states of being like blue or red. And again, that's why it's really not about blue or red. It's like focus on your community.
In terms of our Liberty Spender audience, there's 76 million people we've identified who are willing to buy a product or service when they associate it with a conservative or Christian brand.
There is an opportunity to move people in the entertainment industry who are getting clobbered by taxes and mansion taxes. And the biggest thing is the censorship.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Kurt and Kristen Luidhart, your hosts, and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's raised over $500 million and helped elect over 100 members of Congress, 14 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we're helping your business get elected by answering this question: what if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a unique and engaged audience we call Liberty Spenders? Now, Liberty Spenders are politically conservative or faith-based consumers. They make up roughly 40% of the country, and they're looking to buy from businesses and brands that align with their values.
Our guest today is Vito Glazers, who is definitely a man of many talents. To do the truncated bio, and I would say severely truncated, he's an actor who's appeared on a number of well-known shows like Below Deck, Mystery Millionaire, and Empire. He's produced television shows. He's a recognized expert in reputation management, PR, and celebrity marketing, a tech contributor on Huffington Post, even got a 2 Comma award from ClickFunnels. And of course, for this audience, Vito has worked alongside great organizations like Turning Point USA and a number of conservative influencers and personalities like James O'Keefe, Tucker Carlson, and Charlie Kirk.
Big names.
Yeah, Vito, it's awesome to have you on.
Grateful to be here. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to get to the bottom of how we can reach these Liberty Spenders and learn a lot from you and see if we can teach something too while we're here.
Yeah, I tell you what, you and I have talked before, but I spent some time checking out all the stuff you've been doing. And I really wanted to spend some time at the very beginning talking about this eclectic bio of yours and I think there's an interesting story leading from one thing to the other and how that all evolved. So how did you kind of get into all this kind of stuff, whether it's TV or PR or, being a great writer at HuffPost? How's that all happen?
Well, actually, it's fun. Okay, so the HuffPost thing was part of it all, but I'll come back to that. So really, people think that I'm doing all these different things, but it really just all comes down to doing one thing on every platform possible. And the one thing is just giving myself and giving my clients, connecting them to the audiences that need to hear their message. And so a lot of people, they say, oh, well, I do podcasts. That's all I do is podcasts, right? Or a lot of people are like, oh, I just do television. That's all I do is television. But for me, I got into media about 15 years ago, and media was being disrupted, right? And it was going from, having those cable channels and if you have the understanding of media, right? Like 30 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, you had three television networks. You had CBS, ABC, NBC. You had radio, and basically you had some print magazines. And you could, they really had a bottleneck on what the audiences were allowed to consume.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
With you're right, you're aware, right? So, and then with the admonition of cable news, then that kind of opened up the gates to where there was like, that brought more niche content for audiences. There was news 24 hours a day rather than just at 6 and 9. And then from there, then we got social media. And then social media is like, okay, well, now everybody has a news station in their pocket, essentially. So the mission never changed. The mission was always connect messages with audiences that need to hear them. And now, whether that's through television, podcasts, advertising, now we're doing stand-up comedy, however the audience wants to digest the message, that's not for me to decide. The audience has the control. So I just give the audience the respect they deserve by being the one that's holding the gold, so to speak. And I just am constantly modifying our delivery to be delivering the message on the audience, or where the audience is consuming and how they want to be spoken to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've sort of mastered one thing that you're saying you're finding works on multiple mediums. What do you think is the secret to the thing, whatever that thing is, that you can put on, you can put in Huffington Post, you can do TV with, you can produce shows, you can do a comedy tour. What's the one thing? If there is, maybe there isn't.
There is one thing, and this is the one thing that the majority of content creators ignore, and businesses even ignore it. The number one mistake people make is they do what they think is cool. So they're like, I'm going to start a podcast about, cars or something, or I'm going to start a channel about cars because I think cars are cool. But they don't actually take the time to research, okay, where is the audience for cars? Where is the people that want this information, right? And so what I've done is, the one thing that I do is, first we say, it's actually, I call it the follow the money formula in media. Figure out where the people you want to reach are spending money, consuming content, and what platforms do they trust and get information from? What platforms and influencers and celebrities do they trust and get information from? Then I reverse engineer that and say, okay, is there room for what you want to do as a creator or as a business or a brand? Is that what the people want? Right? And then what we try to do is we find a balance between the data of audience, of what the audience needs, and try to find a balance between what they need and what you are passionate about and what's authentic to yourself. And then figure out some kind of balance in between those two. And that's usually where we have the most success.
Yeah.
I love that. So simple and yet often ignored.
Yeah. And you mentioned the comedy tour. I didn't bring it up in the bio because I wanted to save it because I think it's the coolest thing.
Thank you.
I went to your site and saw you've got a couple of shows coming up. Mm-hmm. And then you were saying it's like the Red Pill Comedy Hour or Comedy Tour. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. I just got into stand-up in January of this year, but for the past few years, I've been writing comedy, and part of what we do with social media as well is like, a comedy is a big part of it, right? Like, people create content. They're like, why didn't it go viral? Oh, why would anybody share something that's boring and non-educational and has no value, right? So to a certain extent, I've been writing comedy for a long time. I finally just said, I realized that in Hollywood, because I'm here in Hollywood, I'm a conservative in Hollywood, which, believe it or not, there's tons of. And here's actually a funny thing is that I actually work with a lot of these comedians, and they're fundamentally conservative, but they've been so blue-pilled that they just don't even see a correlation between their vote and the outcomes in society. And they're like, I'll be backstage at these comedy shows when I was getting started, and people are like, man, I'm so sick of these homeless people. And oh my God, my taxes are crazy. I just did this movie. They took 50% of my residuals going to taxes, and they can't even clean the roads. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, you guys keep voting for this stuff. And they're like, well, what's my vote got to do with anything? What is who I vote? I just vote. They're like, I'm voting for the nice guy. Like, I vote for the nice person that all my friends told me to vote for. Like, what's that got to do with the homeless people and the taxes? I'm like, you don't understand it. Like, your vote and what the ideas you support directly impact the outcomes of the societies that we live in. And you would be shocked the amount of people in the entertainment industry who don't correlate the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not shocked because I know how many voters don't correlate the two.
So they're no different. Yeah.
They're like, I'm voting for unity, or I'm voting for the nice tweets, and stuff like that. I'm voting for whatever. But then they're like, man, these taxes and this inflation and this these issues are really crazy. Somebody's got to do something about these things. If only there was a way.
I know.
So
it's crazy.
I started explaining it to people in a very diplomatic way, And then that's where one of my friends was like, "Oh, you're red pilling people all the time. You're red pilling these girls in Hollywood, and you're red pilling these comedians." And then because they are kind of like, yeah, you know what? Actually, I didn't hate Trump 5 years before he ran for president the first time. That does make sense. Now, wait a second, maybe there is a war on for my mind. And then they're like, well, we're all scared to tell jokes because this is really what started kind of like the red pill side is with the comedy side is they're like, well, we're all scared to tell jokes because we need this income and this is our career and we're tired of playing it safe. And I said, listen, guys, there's a whole other audience that you guys aren't catering to, right? That's being completely ignored. Fox News can only lift so much on its shoulders. You've got 99% of media being produced for essentially what I would call about 30 to 40% of the audience, which is like the left-leaning, like publicly left-leaning audience, right? I would say you got about 40% left-leaning, 40% right-leaning. Let's your Christian spenders, right? Then you've got like 20% that are moderates in the middle that these guys are like working 3 jobs. They don't care what's going on. Couldn't even tell you who the vice president is, right? So, but you've got 99% of the media being produced for that 40% of left-leaning people. And then you've got this other 40% audience that basically lives entirely off of Tucker Carlson. and like, they're not producing any movies for this crowd. That's why when like Matt Walsh comes out with just like any random documentary, like What is a Woman? People are just like flocking to it, right? Or like Sound of Freedom, they're like, oh, finally one for us,
Yep.
Right.
Well, there's more of that coming, which is exciting. You got Angel Studios and others that are really stepping that up, and they're building, like you mentioned, Daily Wire, building new business models to support that. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. So there's, I've even talked to like Charlie Kirk about it a bunch of times. I'm like, man, you guys are like really not maximizing the resource you have. I mean, you guys are great at raising the money and you're great at deploying it and getting people out voting and stuff and getting kids out to vote and getting those troops on the ground, which is super important. But I'm like, with the audience you have and the reach you have, like we should be doing like movie studios and just, doing the same thing the left is doing, but creating that content for the right because the audience is there. Talk about reverse engineering the audience. This is a dramatic, conservative, or what I would just call like normal people are like a dramatically underserved audience in the media. We have the least amount of news outlets. We have the least amount of content being produced consciously for this audience. And there's a tremendous opportunity there. Tucker Carlson proved it. He made $100 million in one day. He got 1 million people to sign up at $100 a year for his subscription. It's $100 million in a day. People are hungry for it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we see people like, say, Nate Bargatze, since we're talking comedy.
Oh, yeah.
He's not, for all I know, I don't know where his politics are. He doesn't really talk politics in anything I've seen, but he's just a clean comedian, doesn't talk about sex, doesn't talk about dirty stuff, doesn't swear, doesn't cuss. And people are just flocking to it. And he's genuinely hilarious.
Yeah.
He was in Indianapolis and recently, sold out the crowd, and everybody I know in my crowd was trying to get tickets.
Yeah.
So they're, even somebody who just subtly markets to this audience is doing well. And you don't have to be, we tell people who are trying to get into this market, you don't have to be super right wing in your brand necessarily. You just have to understand there's an audience of people who want clean, value-centric kind of content or want to know a company isn't engaging in some sort of woke ideology with their dollars, and you can own an audience,
Yep. Yeah. And actually, I did coach one of my clients in doing that. They've been giving speeches about how to vote with your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a speech that we put together that they've been delivering at conservative events where it's basically, start spending on stuff that, doesn't want to kill you. Right? That isn't actively that isn't actively stop funding, the destruction of what you believe in, right?
Yeah.
With your
exactly.
without dollars, you can't do it.
We're gearing up for the Public Square Business Summit, which is of course all about that. Having a marketplace of businesses doing that very thing. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Well, we're way behind, but there's hope. And as far just to like wrap up the comedy idea, so I I'm kind of playing the middle here. So I'm not going to say that I'm like super clean. In fact, if you're like super conservative, you probably would find my humor funny but offensive. But here's the thing: is I got to play the middle because I gotta sell out these rooms. I'm still in Hollywood, and it's kind of like if you go to the Bible and you talk about, well, Jesus wasn't hanging out with the saved; he was hanging out with the tax collectors and the mistresses and the people that needed the saving. I'm in their trenches. I'm speaking their language. I'm selling out rooms at the biggest clubs in Hollywood because people are coming to see somebody who's just openly speaking their mind, right? And I am speaking their language and the way that they want to do it. But then we're bringing them over a little bit. My whole emphasis actually for the Red Pill stuff, we're trying to make it non-political. That's because originally we had a sponsor that wanted us to call it the right wing comedy movement. And the problem with that is it just alienates it. And Red Pill really isn't about politics, right? Because look, we like our side, so called, we embraced RFK, the Democrat, right? We're not divided. We're not just voting straight down the party line. We're looking for people that we feel are telling the truth, that are exposing the corruption, and that are creating the logical path to just stop the gaslighting from the media and the global elites, right? They're trying to convince us that eating bugs and driving electric cars and getting rid of our gas stove and using wooden combs is helping the world, right? So it really isn't a right wing comedy movement. It really is a red pill movement. Red pill has the connotation, obviously, from the Matrix that it's, you take the red pill and you're going to see things for as they are. Blue pill has a connotation that is for erectile dysfunction. So which side do you want to be on?
Well, for what it's worth, I think you made the right decision for all the reasons you said, because, of course we believe facts are on our side, and most people believe that, or they wouldn't have the beliefs they have. But, to your point, I think we just want people to have open discussion, open dialogue, not be silenced, censored, shamed, all of those things. And, so I love that name and think you're on the right track.
Absolutely. I hope, are all your shows in California, or are you hitting the road?
So that's what, I've only been doing stand up since January myself, and the momentum has grown pretty quick. So right now I do 2 to 3 shows a month in California. Comedy's hard, man. You got to really pay your dues. Luckily I haven't bombed and I've never performed to an empty room. I'm not doing like open mics and stuff. I'm doing legit shows. But we are definitely growing it, and I'm getting a lot of support. We are most likely going to start touring next year. I'll be taking the tour next year. Actually, maybe, you want to even help out, because the thing is, I've got the talent. I just need I need more people that are good with like the ads and like, I'm trying to build up the little thing here in LA, because I'm telling you, there's so many conservatives in California. People don't know, but you just go 30 minutes out of LA or San Francisco, the entire state of California is red. I mean, we elected Reagan. We elected Governor Schwarzenegger, the Republican. The state, it's a red state. It's just got very loud, very blue, very densely populated, and very powerful cities here. That's it.
Well, and we talk about that with clients too, because of course, we've done a ton of data and research on this, and we've modeled this audience across the country. And it often surprises people, that the majority of the people that are donating to political candidates, conservative political candidates across the country, a lot come from California. Again, it's such a heavily populated state. The same is true with our Liberty Spender audience and that profile. So I absolutely know what you're getting. There's just so many people that live there, although less and less all the time as people are moving to escape from the poor management.
Yeah, but those people who are escaping are the ones that are like, I didn't know that my vote made my taxes go higher, right? They're just like running away, but they don't. But the problem is they're taking their liberal beliefs and they're moving them to Tennessee and they're moving them to Texas. And that's why people have that whole movement where they're like, don't bring your votes here, right? Like, don't bring your beliefs here. If you're running away from that stuff, don't bring it over here. And that's what happens, And it adds to, I just want to finish a thought really quick about California being fundamentally red outside the major cities. A lot of people don't know, like, Florida is basically like 45% Democrats, right? They look at Florida as being this like Republican haven. I had a friend move there. He's like, well, I moved to Miami Beach. It's worse than West Hollywood. He's like, I don't know what, he's like, he's like, where are these conservatives? I'm like, yeah, you could have just moved to Orange County here in LA and gone an hour south and you would have been in Trump country. So it really isn't, we paint these broad pictures of these states of being like blue or red. And again, that's why it's really not about blue or red. It's like, focus on your community and then focus on the people that you can reach. And I know that there is an opportunity to move people in the entertainment industry who are getting clobbered by taxes and mansion taxes. And the biggest thing is the censorship. That's what's really, because a lot of these comedians and a lot of these entertainers, they don't care about money. They just want to do their work and their art. And now that they're getting hit with the censorship and they're getting hit with cancel culture, and they're scared, they're starting to be like, all right, Vito, if you'll protect us, we'll move to your side.
You're absolutely right. One of the themes we talk about is we're basing some of these marketing decisions or impressions based on geographical lines that were drawn a couple hundred years ago, some of which were drawn in the 1600s. And, Southern California, south of LA, like you're talking about, or San Diego, might have almost nothing in common with San Francisco, but we're kind of lumping them together because they're all in California. And, in terms of our Liberty Spender audience, there's 76 million people we've identified who are willing to buy a product or service when they associate it with a conservative or Christian brand. The number 2 state for those people is California. And people think, oh, they must all be in Alabama and Arkansas, and there's certainly a ton of them in Texas, but there's a ton in California, and 76 million is just a lot of people too. We're talking about an audience that's almost a third of the country,
and those are people specifically that are saying, yeah, I am more likely to buy. I am looking for this.
Yeah, versus the casual guys who if there's a Popeyes and a Chick-fil-A next to each other, are going to pick the Chick-fil-A, but they're not willing to make the inconvenient step of going to find the Chick-fil-A. That 76 million, these are people who might be willing to pay a little extra, might be willing to drive a little further to buy from a Christian or a conservative company. And so there's a ton of potential there, like you're saying, and they're all over the country. And I hope that you see some benefit of that as you build your comedy tour around, and I hope you red pill a ton of people, get them open to seeing life a little differently.
I would like to think that we've red pilled. I've performed in front of about 4,000 people live this year total, because the shows are usually around 200 people a room. So 4,000 people that have been, they've got a taste, and now the next step is. I will say the hardest thing to do in comedy is to have a clean set.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. I got 5 clean minutes. I'm doing an audition for like a big show on the 18th. We have a comedy show in North Hollywood at Ha Ha Comedy Club. That's an audition for a television set, television placement, and it has to be clean. And it was very challenging to take 20 or 30 minutes that I can do in my sleep. I was like, well, I'm having a hard time pulling 5 TV friendly minutes out of this. So I have a lot of respect for these comedians. I'm very grateful. I had a mentor, Tom Dreesen. He opened for Frank Sinatra for 25 years. The guy's never told said a swear word his whole life. He was an awesome mentor. His act is just really classy, and you don't have to be raunchy to be funny. I'm just from Chicago, and this is my first year doing stand-up, and I got a lot to say, so I got to let it out. But I would say by next year, it's definitely on the radar to have the goal is to be able to do 30 or 40 clean minutes and really be able to perform on stages for Turning Point and conservative audiences, be able to go to a church or and really, like you said, share the red pill message without alienating anybody. on on their basic fundamentals, because you got to know the audience. Like I said, you got to reverse engineer the audience. You got to talk to them how they like to be spoken to, right? You have to communicate with them the way how they want to be communicated with on the platforms and through the celebrities and influencers that they trust and get news from, right? So if I can't adjust myself to communicate in a way that they like to be communicated to, which is without swear words and without raunchy ideas or vulgarity, then why would that audience respond to me, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have faith in you, Vito. You can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. It's I mean, comedy in general is tough. I've been fascinated. Jerry Seinfeld a couple of times has sort of opened up to his process of how he writes jokes and practices. I had no idea until I listened to him just how much work goes into a set, and a real professional practices at a lot of places. Tweak the joke a little bit, say it this way, say it that way, observe the reaction. And that's almost like a scientific A/B test kind of process, which you don't feel like that's what a comedian's doing. You kind of, from the outside in, you think, okay, these guys are just kind of riffing and they're inherently funny people. But the good ones
they really hone
like
their
little
craft.
scientists, little psychology experts, right? So I hope you kill it. I think it's another. I think it's another example when I was going through your bio of I thought this guy is really comfortable with the high risk profile, right? Like people who make TV, people who make movies. That's not the most dependable business. It's not like buying a house and seeing it appreciate, right? It's either a series is going to do really well or not. Being in PR and performance marketing or crisis communications is about as high risk profile as you could get. Pure capitalism, pure you hire me to get results, and if you don't, I don't get paid kind of guy. And I thought there's got to be a mindset trick for that, right? Like if you're engaged in such a high risk profile, what makes it so you fall asleep at night and you're not sweating? Or maybe you are sweating.
No, I don't sweat anymore. Now for me, I have a very deep connection with the higher power. And I did this podcast where we were kind of talking about like the meaning of life and all this like existential stuff. But to me, one of the things that kind of keeps it going is whether I'm going to use it like an extreme here, whether you're Hitler or Mother Teresa, 100 years from now, the history books are going to write whatever they want about you, if they write about you at all, right? So you guys couldn't name a single movie star from the original golden age of Hollywood, right? Like, maybe a couple, but fame is super fleeting, especially now. It's like celebrities just come and go super fast. Internet influencer, there isn't even like, what is fame now, right? It's like these niche audiences. So to me, I realized I was like, you know what? Whether I want to be like the worst guy in the world or the best guy in the world, it really doesn't matter long term, right? Like I'm going to be forgotten anyway. So I might as well just do whatever I want. But because I do answer to a higher power, I'm going to do whatever I want for the good guys, right? And that's just for my own personal journey. But I'm like, it's for some people being like, okay, well, your life is just it's just a blink like that. That could be sad and make them depressed. And for me, it was kind of liberating. And it was kind of like, well, it's just that anyway. So who cares? Might as well just play big, play big. And, it's like go all the way. And, obviously you want to be like, I want to be a good person. I want to be a good member of my community and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like if, as long as it doesn't like put me in jail or kill me, like I'm down to roll the dice, and what's the worst that's going to happen? A TV show flops, people talk bad about you, you go up, do comedy, you're not good at it. You go on to do something else. The big mistake people make, especially in the creative side, is they think people are sitting around thinking about them all the time.
Yes.
You're not thinking about me when we're not talking on the podcast. Yeah, we're on the podcast. You're engaged. You're here. But like tomorrow, you're not going to be thinking, you might think about something I said, but like if I flopped, if I came on here, even if I just came on here and totally flopped, you'd be like, man, that was a really bad podcast. Anyways, what's going on with my mortgage and my business and my kid, So nobody's thinking about it. In fact, it's like it's hard to get people to keep thinking about you all the time. And that's why Trump's awesome, because he just lives rent free in all these people's heads, you know? And Trump is one guy that I will say people are sitting around thinking about all the time but he's not thinking about them. So it really is a thing where it's like, it's kind of liberating to know that like, just doesn't really matter. So you might as well just go big, you know, play hard.
Yeah.
Well, or what we say, you know, at the end, it's like, what's really important, you know, and to your point, if you're secure in where you're going, you're secure in who you are. Sure. Try and fail, iterate, try again, and don't get too hung up on those things. Because I'm sure you'd say, you know, when you have had something go poorly, it's typically you've learned something, right? It's either a lesson or, you know, something that helps you get better or stronger.
Yeah, you either win or you learn.
Yeah. I think that
it's still not for everyone.
Yeah.
Your high risk tolerance. So I'm not saying everyone should do it, but
well, and I think that
is right.
perspective about how much people really think about you. I did hear someone tell me, you know, maybe 2 decades ago now, and I onboarded it then. We're all too busy thinking about ourselves to think about other people. To your point, we're thinking about our mortgage. We're thinking about our kids.
Yeah.
And I was told that from a sales coach, right? Because I'm learning how to sell, and I'm worried about how my prospects perceive me. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to ask them tough questions. And he would say, Kurt, you think these people care? They don't care. They aren't thinking about you. They're gonna you'll offend somebody asking them a tough sales question. Maybe they don't hire you. You'll call them back a year later. They don't remember who you were. And it's absolutely true. When you think about that, you know, people are we're very inwardly focused, particularly in modern society right now. We're really taught by modern psychology to obsess about ourselves and how we're feeling. And I also like your perspective on sort of, I don't know, you probably wouldn't have said eternity, but that's what it is, right? It's, and it's a different way. Some people would say that reduces their hope, right? But it's also liberating. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's a balance. Yeah. For some people, I've talked to that idea, and they're like, "Well, that's terrifying. My life has no meaning and purpose. I should just go live under a bridge and do heroin all day." And then other people are like, "Oh, you're right. You know, it doesn't really matter. I should just do whatever I want, enjoy the journey." And then so you got to like balance it out between, you know, being a hedonist and you know, just living your life to the max. But at the end of the day, if you do believe in a higher power, you're just gonna, you know, you'll meet your maker someday. And the one big thing for me is that I'm in a fraternity, and I was in charge of doing the obituaries. And a lot of the fraternity members were passing away, and I was writing these obituaries. And these guys had like incredible careers, like Navy SEALs and World War II vets. And these guys had gone in and like freed villages. The obituary was like a minute long, man. Like it's, where were you born? What school you went to? If you were married, had some kids, some stuff about your family, 1 or 2 notable career highlights. Oh, he was deployed to Normandy and was one of the survivors and won a Purple Heart. The end. You know, it was like, I'm like, man, it's like you could make a whole movie about this guy, but at the end of the day, you know, you're getting 4 or 5 sentences read about you at the end, and then people are just going to move on to whatever their next problem is that they're dealing with, or whatever their next thing that excites them is, or whatever, right? And so when I that kind of put it into perspective, I'm like, if my life at the end is just going to be 5 sentences anyway, nobody's going to care about the debt or where I graduated from or like any of these things. It's like, just do it for you.
You mentioned about talking about the meaning of life and being really existential, and you're kind of getting my head in that direction now all of a sudden. But I think that belief in a higher power, God, Jesus is the important distinction there, right? Because I've often concluded, right, it matters, because if in the end, otherwise it doesn't, right? You're sort of, to your point about your friend, let's just do coke and heroin under a bridge, right? Yeah. Like there's some truth to that, right? If nothing really matters ultimately, and if in eternity there's no creator, there's no one who made us, there's ultimately no, truth or justice, then who cares, right? Most of us don't live lives like that, because somewhere in our head we realize that there is something that matters in the end. But I like the perspective of, but it also means, hey, this stuff isn't as big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We all make it like it is. Every decision, like, oh, if I don't get this right, my life is over. No, it's not over. How I learned a little bit of that perspective, I started journaling, right? And I did it as more of an exercise for prayer because I can't concentrate if I'm just sort of bowing my head and praying for extended period of time. So I'll write down my prayers. And I used to throw the journals away because sometimes I pray about stuff I'd prefer other people don't read later. And Kristen encouraged me to keep them. So I started keeping these journals. And every once in a while, I'll go into the closet where I keep all these. And I probably have 50 of them now. And I'll go pick one from a few years ago and I'll read, like, what was I praying about on that day? And I'll be writing with like desperation. God, solve this problem for me or my life will be over. I don't know what to do. I'm so stressed. And I'll think to myself, I forgot about that. And that was where I kind of gained the perspective. It's like, yeah, I don't even remember that
problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the most important thing in the world to me on that day. Mm-hmm. Right. I thought my life was over. And now it's like, I don't even remember that, Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was happening.
That's a good perspective. Yeah. So I'll tell you, I'll just break it down for you, Kurt. If you go and do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy and bomb, God's not going to hate you for it. Okay.
Maybe I should try it. I don't know that I'd be funny for 5 minutes though. I think
secretly you would love something.
Well, I've always kind of wanted to do comedy, but I think in the end I'm not that funny.
Well, I'll tell you, it really is a science. It's less about actually being funny. I know some very funny people who are not good at stand-up. And that's how I got into stand-up specifically. Was my ex-wife is a full-time social media comedy influencer. We used to write a lot of skits together. We did 4 billion views last year, or two years ago. We've been divorced for a year now, but we were doing the couples comedy, and it was very just formulaic, right? Like you could just you could create the prediction. So she was very good at doing it online. And I had told her, I was like, look, if you really want to be like known as a comedian, you have to kind of respect the craft, and you should be able to do 5 or 10 minutes of stand up. You don't have to be like a full-time stand up, but like you should be able, it's like an actor, being able to do like some theater, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that's like respecting the craft, right? And so I was like, look, I have all the connections in Hollywood. I'll get you on the stages. I'll get you the coaches and the writers, whatever. So we got it for her, but she couldn't do the stand up. She get stage fright. So then she got jealous of me because I'm good on stage. And so she would tell me, she'd be like, oh, you're not funny. Like, she'd kind of be like killing my dream. So after we got divorced, that's when I jumped into stand up, and I was like, I'm going to do this for myself just to prove anybody who said that I wasn't funny wrong. So if you think you're not funny, you're just one formula away. You're one coaching session away from being able to go up there and know how to tell the jokes. And it's kind of like with the Kardashians. There's a joke where it's like, you look at the old pictures of the Kardashians and you look at them today and you realize I'm not ugly. I'm just poor. It's it's not that you're not funny. You just haven't invested in it, into learning how to do it. It's
well, you heard it here first, folks. Maybe that'll be further on down the line for
yeah. Well, I'll need a good coach if I do. I have nightmares about being heckled though. Yeah. You probably have had that experience perhaps, but it frightens me to death that somebody might heckle me from the crowd.
Well, this is actually a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Because I know we talked about this before we started, but I know you have talked about how content creators should be okay having what you called haters, right?
Yes.
And how that can be good, and you should maybe even celebrate that. And of course, that's very counterintuitive if you're a business owner and you don't want to think about that. But talk a little bit about that and share your perspective on why that could be, why you should maybe change your mindset about that.
Thank you, Kristen, for bringing that up, because that is really important in today's day and age. Listen, there's no way to make everybody happy. You know that saying where it's like, if you want to please everybody, sell ice cream, right? So you're going to have angry people no matter what. Trying to please everybody is a great way to failing everyone, right? So what you got to do with these audiences is actually, like, the more controversial they are, the more you can get amplification on social media, because like I said, I have a lot of clients. They're like, well, why aren't I going viral? I'm like, you're just playing it too safe. There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to
Right.
talk about. If people aren't, the best thing you can hope for is people arguing in the comments, blowing your post up, right? And so what we teach our clients to do is say, like, for example, if you sell dog food, you're never going to sell to a cat people. Your product just doesn't even appeal to them, right? And I'll tell you who's great at this: Trump, Elon Musk, Kanye West. These guys are the best at going on and just alienating an audience of people that will never buy from them anyway. And then what they do is they rattle the cage of that other people so hard that those people go out and become their trumpets. And then because there's always going to be people who think differently, you just need anybody carrying your message for you. Now, there is the saying, like, all publicity is good publicity. That is, as long as what they're saying about you is in line, like, it can't be like you're scamming people, right? And then they're publicizing that. But I'll even give you a funny example. Like, we have this gold client. He's a speaker, big Trump guy. Basically, the news, ever since he kind of like openly started supporting these conservative organizations, news publications like New York Times is hammering this guy. But they're writing negative stuff about, they're hating on him, right? They're his, like, imagine having the New York Times as your hater, right? Yeah. But the thing is, his audience hates the New York Times. So the more the New York Times hates him, they're like, wow, look, this guy's got like the New York Times going crazy. But they're still amplifying his message. They're still saying, like, well, he's telling people they should move their money out of stocks and put it into gold because liberals are going to crash the economy and blah, blah, blah. And then liberals are never going to buy from him anyway. So liberals are on the New York Times, oh, what an idiot. Screw this guy, right? But the conservatives are looking and being like, I should move my money all into gold. He's right. You know, they're not looking at the negative of it. So it's a matter of being so grounded in your message and in your beliefs that even when somebody makes fun of you, it's only going to create negative comments from people that are never going to buy from you anyway. But then it's going to bring you to the front of mind of people that are on your side, right? So again, back to like the dog food thing. If you create like this huge controversy where people are like, I hate cats are the worst. All the cat people are like arguing with the dog people. You're just amplifying yourself and then what happens is too, is because so many people are afraid to say what's on their mind. This is where Trump gets a lot of momentum, is people are afraid to say what's on their mind. So when they hear somebody saying what they're thinking, you become their hero. And then they're even more likely to be loyal to you and buy from you because they're like, oh, you're saying what I wish I could say. And you're fighting this fight. But really, it's like, what are words going to do, right? Like, people care so much about comments and stuff. Like, what are words? You know, it's one step under. You want to talk about like hecklers and stuff. Like, I was in a group with like some influencers and some reality TV people where we would share the meanest things people would say to us every day on social media. And it was like a competition, like, who could have the meanest, like, who got the meanest comment that day.
Yeah.
And we were like I taught people to embrace it. I was like, because the conversation started, my friend, she was on The Bachelorette. She's like, people are talking about my calves. She's like, I'm up all night. I'm like, I'm so jealous. I'm like, I wish people would make fun of me for something so obscure. I'm like, people always are like targeting the easy stuff. They're like hitting me for the hairline. For some reason, people are always talking about my weight online. I don't consider myself like unusually like overweight or anything. I'm maybe like 20 pounds overweight, but like people are always talking about my weight online, my hair online. I'm like, you guys just gotta like, I think it's funny. I think it's funny, but you got to kind of have like a stomach for it, right? But they don't understand that every time they post those things, it gives me the opportunity to say something funny back. And then that like riles my people up. And then next thing you know, it's like just going viral, you know? That's what we got to do.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the lesson there, like you said, is when you're grounded. That word I think was really good because we talk about that a lot. And of course, it's a little different when we're talking about political candidates versus businesses. But the point is still true. You know, when you know who you are, what you stand for, and you're authentically connecting about that and your values, I mean, naturally, by putting that stuff out there, you're going to disagree or repel people that disagree with you. But you're also going to endear yourself and people are going to be attracted to you when there's alignment there. And so just to your point, that's how we work. And you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because one of the things you talked about, and I've seen on Glazers Media, is that you help people have strategies to go viral. And generally, when somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, you're a marketing guy, help me go viral," that's usually a red flag for me. And just like, I don't want to be in that because that's somebody with expectations I can't meet. But that's something you really specialize in, and really help people with, or at least something you've talked about a lot on your website and out in the media. So, is that sort of philosophy of saying something interesting, maybe controversial, key part of that viral strategy? Are there other things that you do that you think contribute to helping a client or customer go viral, if you will?
I would say the easiest way to go viral is just to put out a logical opposing view to something that's trending in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's because there's always going to be a lot of people who want to say it and they're scared to say it. So if you're the one who says it, you'll get those people behind you. And then the reason they're scared to say it is because they don't have the stomach or the grounding for those negative comments. So if you can get the negative comments going, you can surf the haters to the top.
Timing is so key. And so being intelligent about that and knowing this is the moment. This is the moment. The timing is right. This needs to be said. This position needs to be heard. This product needs to be tweaked. People should know about a stance somebody's taking or a business is taking. And we talk about that with the success in this market, because you can do so much with a little. You're talking about ad spend and where you invest your dollars just by being intelligent about thinking about what message can I put out, what timing, to your point, platforms. But you can absolutely give yourself an unfair advantage by using strategies like that.
I can give you how I take people from the viral dream and put it into like quantifiable deliverables. What we do is, viral is like a hot word that just attracts people because people want to go viral, right? But then I tell people like, why do you want to go viral? And they're like, well, because I want to make tons of sales. And then I'm like, okay, well, there's like a better path to, if that's your end goal, like let's focus. Part of our onboarding is what we call extracting the North Star, finding out why does somebody want to go viral? Why does somebody want to be famous? Oh, well, it's because I want to sell a lot of books. Okay, well, why don't we just focus on selling the books and leave that to me and I'll tell you how to sell books, Don't worry about what you think is going to sell books. We're going to worry about like how to get that goal done. So a lot of people in the marketing business, they are order takers, right? They think that they just have to do what the client asks for. The client says, make me go viral. Okay, I made you go viral. They're not digging deep enough into what the client actually wants and needs. And that's our role as experts, is to guide them. You don't go to the doctor and say, well, I just want to have my teeth pulled out. Well, why? Well, because I got a toothache. Okay, well, just tell me you got a toothache. I'll fix the toothache for you, right? Like, so
that's a good example.
Yeah. People go to marketing companies and they ask for stuff that doesn't really have anything to do. It's just their perception of what's going to get them to their end game. But so what we do is we do use a lot of buzzwords, and in a lot of cases we do, for some people, creating viral campaigns is the answer. They're like, I want global awareness of what's going on. I want to be recognized when I walk down the street because I'm already rich. And because that's our slogan for our company is we make famous people rich. We make rich people famous, right? So if you're famous and you've got like a big audience, a lot of these people in Hollywood, they appear wealthy. They have no idea how to make money. They just got big audiences. They're so grateful for any cash injection that we can bring them. So we bring them a lot. I'll take a famous person's audience and I'll pair that with something that needs amplification, right? And then on the other end, we make rich people famous. That's a big one for us, is like they've already made the money, but money with no like credit in America doesn't like really go that far, because like you need to have kind of a balance of both. Like it's cool to be like wealthy, but if you're wealthy and you can't have any influence because nobody knows you, that's where I think the clients that are coming to us start to feel like, okay, well, I've made my money, but now I want to make change. And all I can do is donate money basically to other people. But why can't I be the person, right? Like to share the message. So that's what we do, is we create a platform for them. And then in those cases that like going viral is the kind of like the key, because they don't really care about making their money back necessarily. They're just like, we want people talking about this. That's what's important to me. So if that's the end game, then going viral is the answer for that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring up that whole slogan because I thought as a slogan for a company, that's $1 million slogan, right?
Thank
We
you.
make rich
Thank you
people
so much.
famous, famous people rich. And such a good way to describe, right? What it is that your kind of special niche is, And I was going to say, I was going to ask you to explain it, although you probably really did well there. What made you kind of focus on that over, a traditional, say e-commerce? I'm going to help my business, going to help you achieve high SEO and run some Facebook ads. What kind of got you to the kind of focusing on this part of the equation?
So I actually never intended to get into the PR business. I used to run an affiliate marketing network. It was all direct response. So my background originally was in direct response advertising. And I got into this reputation management disaster early on, like I said, like 15 years ago or more, right when people started Googling people. And what had happened was I actually was very outspoken politically in Chicago. Big mistake. So they literally put the government on me because I was starting to have some influence. So they basically put the FTC on me on a minor technicality, just to disqualify me from like running for public office. Now that we look back, because like I was explaining it to like Charlie Kirk, and we were in this room, and all of us had been hit by these like 3-letter agencies on these little technicalities when we were like in our early 20s and stuff,
Yeah.
And I got sued by the FTC, I think when I was like 26 or 27. And, and it was just, Section 5 of the FTC Act, which just basically says they can sue you for anything. And it settled for like, it was a $2 million lawsuit, settled for $20,000. All they wanted to do was get these press releases out saying Vito Glazer is not credible, right? So they derailed me, and it did a pretty good job. And then simultaneously at the same time, I had a rogue business partner who stole a bunch of money from people and then wrote all this bad stuff about me online. So you would Google me and you'd see like government lawsuits, business partner writing negative stuff about you online. And I was like, okay, well, what kind of happened was advertisers stopped wanting to work with me at the time for the network. And I was the opposite state of mind. I was like the wealthy guy hiding, didn't want any attention. Right. I was like, no social media, nothing. So what I realized is when you don't take the initiative on telling your story and laying the foundation for who you are and what your values are, you're leaving it wide open for your competitors and your haters to write your story about you first. So I just wanted to get this repaired. And I hired all these PR companies, and none of them could do anything. They were totally outdated. None of them had any idea or understanding of digital or online or how PR and kind of SEO go together online and personal branding. And that's actually how I ended up writing at the Huffington Post. I was like, I just took it into my own hands, and I started just pitching journalists and talking to people about, hey, let me tell my side of the story on this government thing, on this, what happened with my business partner. I just want to get my side of the story out. And then so I learned, okay, you got to like build yourself up. You have to like have sources. You have to do interviews in smaller places for them to pull from, because it's a copy and paste journalist culture, right? Like nobody wants to do their own research. Nobody wants to be the first person to write anything.
What? That's shocking.
Yeah. I mean, it was shocking to me, right? So, but basically, I realized
you think this stuff's all been vetted, and it's not.
It's all literally like some of this Russian collusion stuff was copy and pasted off like $100 Yahoo Finance press releases that people were putting out that journalists just ran with. Like, that's why I'm a media expert, because I can like look at the media and be like, okay, this was paid for by this person and this and that. So I learned how to do all these little things to get my name going, so they could just copy and paste it and then spread my story that way. And I gave them the little hooks and, stuff like that they needed to do. You got to do their job for them, is what I learned in PR. You do their job for them and pay them a little money. Easy. And then we started doing the kind of like sponsored content play, where I was like, look, I'll pay you to run my story. And that's kind of led to like a lot of like the kind of PR that's going around nowadays, where it's like brand. Even Forbes launched a whole brand partner deal thing where you can like pay them to be in Forbes now. So with what all I wanted to do was fix my reputation online, so I could go back to running my ad network. So I fixed the reputation so well that then what was happening is a lot of my old partners and associates from affiliate marketing were launching their own e-com brands, or they were going to coaching and personal branding. Their meeting the cancel mob. They're getting hit with bad reviews from competitors. They, like people are just, it's kind of Wild West online. And so they're like, well, I remember yours looked really bad. And now you've got Forbes and Huffington Post on here. I'll give you 20 grand to fix mine. And I was like, all right, I'll do it for you as a favor, but I really just want to work on my business, on my ad network over here. And then next thing you know, I got 10 people doing it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm making almost more money from this and more purposeful work because a lot of these people are I'm defending a lot of false accusations. And then, it's funny. So I ended up writing at the Huffington Post. A big thing that kind of red pilled me, because I would say I was more like politically moderate. I didn't really care about politics. I was more like a libertarian, but I knew Trump was going to win. I knew Trump was going to win because I had my hand on the data. My ex-girlfriend was working at Cambridge Analytica. She really knew her. She was like, Vito, the data is really looking like Trump's going to win, And so I was going on all the TV news outlets because they couldn't find anybody in Chicago that would go on TV and say Trump's going to win. So I go on TV, I'd say, yeah, I think Trump's going to win. They would make fun of me, all the negative comments, blah, blah, blah. But I had fixed my reputation. I learned the strategy that I called building the reputation management wall. So no matter what people were like trying to say negative about me, they couldn't get through my wall of positive things that I had built up. And then Huffington Post put out this email one day. And I was writing really good stuff, man. I was interviewing all kinds of big people, and I had some really good interviews on there. And I was interviewing cops that had that were dealing with all crazy stories that I had. And all my stories had millions of views. One day the editor puts out an email and says, everybody needs to write a negative article about Trump and put it in the entertainment section.
Oh,
and I said, well, what if I just wrote like a neutral article about Trump that talks about like what a great, how great he is, or like some of the marketing things, like maybe not even how great he is at marketing, but just like 7 marketing things that I see as a marketer that I see that Trump's doing. And they're like, if you don't write a negative article about Trump by the 31st of the month, your column's going to be deleted. And that was my first experience being deplatformed over refusing to basically bend the knee. So they deleted my column and they banned me from the Huffington Post. And from there, then I was like, okay, this is really unfair. Then Trump won. I had like a viral following on Facebook at the time. It was like Facebook pages. And then I was doing like live streams predicting the outcomes. I partnered with this betting company called Predictit, where you could like bet on the outcomes of political debates and stuff. And so I was like giving the picks. I was almost like doing sports picks on who's going to win these like primaries and stuff. And then from there, I had a lot of credibility in politics. And then basically I just kind of like rode the wave, and it's just been a matter of like continuing to reinvent yourself on each social platform. And like I said, it's the same thing though. It's just me finding the audience, telling them the story that they want to hear, connecting a brand in there to pay for it. And now I just think comedy is a better platform because I was doing like little videos. I interviewed, I even had like the podcast, and I've had some success. I interviewed Joe Exotic from prison. I interviewed, like Roger Stone, and then Netflix had me like interviewing like all the Netflix stars. So I interviewed the Tinder swindler girls. I interviewed a couple different people from Netflix, and again, it wasn't going viral because it was just too friendly and too soft, so it was doing okay. I'd get 20,000 views. I'd get whatever. But then I was like, how do I just keep the social media going? I got this big audience. And then I started just posting the stand-up clips, and now boom, every stand-up clip is like million views. I got people DMing me all the time. Dude, we love your comedy. We didn't know about you. It's cool that you're on the right side politically and stuff like that. So, it's a matter of doing the same thing over and over again, but in different ways. And I'll give you one case study of an old friend and mentor of mine that dropped the ball on this for your audience. They probably know him, and I want your audience to apply this to their business. I used to work with Mancow Muller. Do you remember Mancow? Big radio guy?
I remember the name. Yeah.
So Mancow was from Chicago. He's basically number one guy in radio. He was like tied with Howard Stern for years. They had the big radio beef. Then Howard Stern went into digital radio. Mancow stayed with radio. I had the opportunity, and I presented the opportunity to produce Mancow's podcast as a podcast. Early on, I was working with a big podcast network. Was associated with them with Kevin Smith, who produced like Dogma and Clerks and all these big indie movies. He was the first guy who really crushed podcasts, and his podcast network hard. It was called Smodco. And we had the opportunity to get Mancow. I was like, Mancow, all we got to do is take your radio show and just broadcast it on the podcast. And we're going to, and we have Kevin Smith, who's your friend and a huge director, and he's going to pump this thing. It's going to be huge. And Mancow was like, I don't do podcasts. I just do radio. My job is radio. All I do is radio. And what's Mancow doing now? AM radio to like 1,000 people in Chicago, when he could have easily been like the next Joe Rogan. He would have beaten Joe Rogan to the punch on that. And he already had the following. So it's when people get so hung up in what they think their job is rather than what their job actually is. When you're a media person, your job is not to do television. Your job is not to do movies. Your job is not to do radio. Your job is to tell the story. And your job is to respect the audience and to go to the platform that they're on and tell the story to them there. That's your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So today is podcasts. Next week, it might be something else.
So I love what you were just saying, Vito, about what people should do when they're in media and the press and what your job is. So tell us, again, for our audience, business owners, what should they be doing? How should they apply what you're sharing right now?
So the business owners should be focusing on the value to the audience that made them successful in the first place, which may adapt, right? So if you're a service business, the service you are providing them, let's say it's you were providing the service of doing, Facebook marketing. Don't get so hung up on the fact that you're a Facebook marketer. Get hung up on the fact that what you were doing was connecting your clients to the audiences to make sales. So you might have to move over to YouTube, you have to move over to TikTok, and you might have to move over to something else. Don't get pigeonholed into, I'm a Facebook person. That's what I do. Same thing. It's like, just a totally different example, right? Is like, maybe you're a restaurant, right? And you serve a certain kind of food. You don't get hung up on like, well, this is all we've ever done. We make this one food and people aren't buying it anymore. Well, just your job is to give people what they want. So if the audience is changing, give them, change with the audience and give them what they want. That's the biggest tip that I could give any business owner is don't get so caught up in what you think your job is. Figure out what the value to the client is and then focus on giving them that regardless of the platform or regardless of the product. Just focus on the solution that they came to you for.
I love that. It's we talk about that, which is, so many business owners, we fall in love with our product or service when we really need to fall in love with our customer. And what do they need and how do we serve them? And because that'll tweak, that'll encourage you to update your offerings. That'll encourage you to change your product by, changing the features, any of those things, or adding on new things as you think of another way to make it better and better. So that's fantastic advice, Vito.
Yeah.
Thank you for making it more eloquent.
Well, it's not my line. I don't know where I heard it, but it's a good one.
Yes, it is.
I can't take credit.
Well, we like to do a quick little lightning round at the end.
Let's do it.
And we like to do 60, 90 seconds on legacy you hope to leave behind from your business endeavors.
Legacy I hope to leave behind from my business endeavors are... The legacy I would like to leave behind from my business endeavor is I just want to pave the road for people to be able to do and say within the legal limits anything they want without the fear of being censored. I want to be an example that you can be influential even if you weren't born with looks, money, or talent. I want, which is my life story. I want to let people know that, it really doesn't matter. So instead of getting depressed about that, just have fun with it.
Yeah. And we also love 90 seconds on something random. Maybe it's a hobby you've gotten into recently, something you read that you love, something you're passionate about.
I'll share with you my passion, which is what we call online. It's called the Gratitude Gang. And essentially what I talk about is every day waking up, being grateful for everything. It's easy to be grateful for the good stuff. And it's easy to be grateful for what you think is good for you. But when you learn to be grateful for things that you even perceive as maybe being bad, but you just learn that it's part of the journey and part of the bigger process and actually leading you to maybe something that's better for you. And you can truly wake up every day and make it a challenge to say, I'm going to be grateful for everything. And you're like, well, how can I be grateful for being in a a car accident, or how could I be grateful for getting a parking ticket or traffic on the 405? There's a challenge, and I do talk about it on some of my Instagram clips. It's too long to talk about in 90 seconds, but there is a way to train your mind to be grateful for everything. And the more grateful you are for what you have, the more God gives you to be grateful for. So just make sure to be grateful for everything.
Yeah.
I love that. It's such a good practice.
I do love it. And we always like to end with an opportunity. So people who are hearing this, they think, boy, I really want to talk more to Vito. Maybe there's somebody who wants to hire you. Give us a little 60 seconds on Glazers Media, or why somebody what's a good pitch for why they should reach out and talk to you.
I love that. Well, for your specific audience, you don't even have to be rich or famous. But if you are a business, we're actually looking for more conservative businesses that are looking to collaborate with right-wing influencers, so to speak. If you want to put your wallet and vote with your wallet and invest in the future of media, and you want to take over Hollywood and take over the media and put some money up, we have opportunities to sponsor great comedy tours, or that'll get your business tons of exposure. Or even if you just want a great spokesperson that believes in your values and has a great audience that's aligned with exactly what you think, we, Glazers Media, would love to facilitate that. You can fill out a free proposal at glazersmedia.com.
Awesome.
Excellent.
I'll tell you what, we will definitely have a few of those conservative businesses that want to work with conservative influencers. And as a little addition to your pitch, I tell our conservative businesses we talk to a lot that's a top strategy I would always recommend. It's everybody wants to think, okay, how can I run my Facebook ads better? But if you can really create an ally or develop an ally with a conservative thinker or somebody in conservative media, somebody with a big following, that's even more powerful, I think, in this space. So it's been great to have you on. I mean, it's been awesome. People who want to learn more about Vito can hit vitoglazers.com or glazersmedia.com, or I think at Vito Glazers on Twitter or X.
At Vito Glazers on all social media, vitoglazers.com. And for the business, if you want to generate your free proposal, go to glazersmedia.com.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you for tuning in. We invite you to join the Liberty Partnership community at libertyspenders.com. There you can learn more about how you can engage with this audience and take advantages of some of the strategies we discussed today with Vito. So again, check out libertyspenders.com, and thanks for listening. Until next time.